Well, when I look at the rest of the field of the Derby, um, I'm relatively comfortable with the three that I've narrowed it down to. Obviously, you know, Mendelssohn is my top choice. The other two that, you know, I really had a hard time narrowing it down from those three to a top choice, Good Magic and Justify, are both very dangerous. You know, Good Magic is the 2-year-old champion, Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner, even though only one horse, I think Street Sense, won the Juvenile on the Derby. Oh no, two, I'm sorry, Nyquist and Street Sense, maybe. But Good Magic to me is very, very dangerous because he fits a profile that I look for in the Derby, and that's a horse that's going to run a peak effort. You know, Chad Brown learned from Bobby Frankel, one of the best ever to play the game, and just amazing at getting a horse to peak when he wants it to peak. His comeback race in the Fountain of Youth was a race that was won by Promises Fulfilled, who I liked that day. Most of you know that. And he went wire to wire. Good Magic was third the whole way. What's his name? Strike Power, I believe, was second the whole way. It was pretty much a merry-go-round race over Gulfstream surface, and, you know, that is what it is. Tough to close over there. It was his first race back. I'm sure Chad didn't have him 100% cranked up. Didn't have to be. That wasn't the goal. The Bluegrass was a workmanlike win. Did what he had to do, beat who he had to beat. But I think those two races and the way Chad trains have him sitting on go and a peak effort. So he's a horse I've got to use, I've got to respect. Jose Ortiz is winning everything. He's riding good. He'll be all in for the Derby, of course. Everybody is. And he's a scary horse. I think, you know, he's a little under the radar, but I really don't think that he should be. I think he's, you know, he's a top contender in my book. Justify, I probably would have been against, despite, you know, all the hype and, you know, knowing he could be, you know, all that and more. But, you know, for a horse to win the Derby of 3 starts and no seasoning takes a special horse and a lot of horse. But, you know, here he is. And I think the draw helped him tremendously. First off, I think he's got a lot of natural speed. And I think that, believe it or not, if Promises Fulfilled is away a little slow, gets bottled up at all on the inside or anything like that, I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Smith sends this horse to the lead and he just goes. We know Mike Smith is not afraid to go to the top, and we know he's not afraid to go fast if they're cruising. So I can easily see Justify winding up on the lead, or if not on the lead, in a very cozy catbird kind of seat. If he's got Flame Away inside of him and Promises Fulfilled inside of him, and they go, and the other speed on the outside, Noble Indy, some of them go and you know, cross over, he could wind up 4th, 5th, and you know, ahead of the closers and some of the other stalkers and mid-range horses, and wind up in a very nice catbird seat, and that could make him awfully, awfully dangerous. We know he's got some kick, we know he's got a punch, so, you know, at some point in the race, I think he's going to either make a move or be on the lead where you got to say, uh-oh, he's going to be the one to catch. And if he's all that they think he might be and that Bob Baffert thinks he might be, he might not get caught. And he may break the Apollo curse. So, you know, under Mendelssohn, those are the other two I like. The other ones I consider, you know, talk a little bit about Hofburg. It would be more of an accomplishment, even though Hofburg had one race or two, for him to win the Derby, probably than Justify. Very unlike Bill Mott move, running his horse in the Kentucky Derby. When he ran in Florida, I watched the race, and right after they hit the wire in the Florida Derby, I said the best horse ran second. I thought he ran as good, if not better race than Audible. Audible, was well off a very fast pace, as was Hofberg, but Audible had a lot of seasoning and a lot of bottom, got the jump on him, and Hofberg coming off a maiden win, being a little bit green, ducking in, ducking out a little bit, never stopped running and coming at the end, really looked like an up-and-coming kind of horse, and really looked like as the distances get longer, he'd be able to inhale a horse like Audible. So I couldn't like Audible going forward. I liked him a little less when Johnny Velasquez jumped off him to ride Vino Rosso. But I had to like Hofberg out of that race. Now, some people said, you're crazy. How could you like Hofberg and not like Audible? That's my logic. I articulated it in a little bit more detail in my Derby preview. But I think that, that was that race. This is this race. And I think Hofberg's, gained a little bit out of that race. And at 1.25 miles in a race that may wind up with a very fast pace and, having some speed horses come back, it can be very dangerous if the race turns out that way. So Hofberg is another horse I definitely consider. Two other horses that I consider are My Boy Jack, who's got a lot of bottom, is another horse that would benefit from a very fast pace. He came up the rail in the goo at Oakland Park. He went 100 wide at the fairgrounds, and then he also was zigging in and out, but not greenly, just with a lot of agility, zigging inside, outside into Lexington, a race that he, kind of grinded out and won. If the pace gets really fast, he's another one that can be coming. Vino Rosso is the other one that I would consider. He might not be as good as some of the other horses that we talked about, but he is improving, and I think that he's coming into the race right, and I'm sure he's one of the few that we could be a little confident that he'll get the 1.25 miles. He'll handle that distance. That's a huge factor. Johnny Velasquez went to him over Audible. That's also an important factor. So, those would be the ones I would really spread out to on a real deep ticket. If I was gonna do that. That's 5 out of 20 horses. I could very easily bet a pick 4, pick 5, or pick 6 using 5 there. And I think I could get it home. My knock on Magnum Moon, and I'll talk about some of the contenders that I'm against. My knock on Magnum Moon is that he is a horse I think peaked in the Arkansas Derby in Hot Springs. I know Pletcher's been training him inside of horses because he was bearing out in the stretch in Hot Springs. He came home really fast, 11 and change, but and bearing out, that's even more impressive. And, it's tough to knock an undefeated horse, but I don't like to see a horse bearing out heading into the Derby. So that's a negative for me. Another horse that a lot of people, like, that I'm not really, all that keen on, is Bolt d'Oro. A lot of people like Bolt d'Oro. Castellano jumped off him pretty quickly. That's got to be a negative. I mean, Bill Shoemaker took off, Northern Dance at a Ride Hill Rise. So they're not always right. We know that. And we got to go by our own handicapping and our own, opinions. We're not going to follow riders around and jockey agents around. But it's got to be a negative because, everybody wants to win the Derby. Castellano's never won one. He's pushing for it. He's, getting towards the latter part of his career. We know he wants to win it and wants to win it bad. So he's going to ride who he's got his best shot. It's got nothing to do with Pletcher, Brown, connections, anything like that. The Derby, anything goes. Everybody takes their best shot. Everybody wants to win this race. Bolt d'Oro, I always thought was a little bit overrated. And that doesn't mean I don't think he's a really nice horse, because I do. And, he certainly would not shock me. But he couldn't really get into Justify in the Santa Anita Derby, and I think Justify is more apt to improve off that race than he is. So, you know, even with the pace scenario, I really I can't get to him. Two bombs, Combatant, and maybe Free Drop Billy, and maybe even Enticed if you want to talk about, you know, horses that can, you know, somehow wind up third or fourth in the superfecta. Those would be, you know, the kind of horses that I would look for, you know, to maybe make one of those, you know, huge superfecta payoffs in the Derby. But I really will be, you know, somewhat confident going into the last leg of any multi-race wager with, you know, those 5 horses. Mendelssohn being my top choice and the one I go back at. Good Magic, Justify, Hofburg, Vino Rosso, and you know, maybe if I'm feeling a little bit more like spreading, the next one I would probably put in is My Boy Jack. But I'll definitely be using those 5. You know, My Boy Jack, if you know, he's the next one for me, but I would have to see something during the races, which I will be watching intently, that makes me want to go there, like speed not winning, closes winning, excuse me, or some rain. You know, those are things that will probably get me to go 6 deep in the Derby as opposed to 5. That said, though, my top choice, as I explained before, is Mendelssohn. He will be the one I go back at. And if I get knocked out of everything, which has happened before, and I'm going into the Derby, I'd probably bet Mendelssohn on top of those other horses in the exacta, and then go all in the triple and superfecta. So it would be Mendelssohn in the top spot with Good Magic, Justify, Hofburg, and Vino Rosso in the second spot, maybe even My Boy Jack, and then all in the third and fourth slots. That's if I get knocked out of everything. If I'm alive in my pick 4s, 5s, and maybe the pick 6, I am doing a Twin Spires players pool. You're welcome to join, open a Twin Spires account and get into it. I'm going to try my hardest to hit it. You know, last year I used Thunder Snow, got a lot of flack over that, and comes back, wins the Dubai World Cup, a lot of races in between, so I think the flack was unnecessary. But that said, you know, if I'm alive with those 5, I'll sit back. I might not bet the supers or the triples or anything like that. If I'm not, you know, Mendelssohn will be the one that I go after, and I'll definitely have him more than once in the pick 4s and the pick 5s, where the other ones I may have only once. And that's kind of how I see the Derby this year. I think it's going to be a you know, very competitive race. You know, on another side note, I don't think Bravazzo is fast enough, good enough, or anything like that. But we've seen this movie before with Wayne Lucas, when he just pops up and wins when you don't expect him to, as opposed to 20 years ago where we expected him to win every one of these big races that he was in. So I'll just throw that out there to ponder. Not betting him, I can't bet off that, but I have seen the movie before. Enjoy the Derby, everybody, and we will be back with a couple of more spots in a little bit.